Hello, my name is Teresa Chickwitz, and I'm honored to be here representing Betrayal Project USA. We're a victim-led organization dedicated to exposing institutional betrayal, honoring those that we've lost, and pursuing justice for crimes committed underneath the guise of public health and COVID-19. You can learn more about our work, view our victim stories, submit your story, and get involved by visiting our website, betrayalprojectusa.org. Again, that's betrayalprojectusa.org. You can also visit Rumble, BitChute, X, or searching Betrayal Project USA, or going to our website and linking to our social media. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Gary Seibel, who lost his brother Tom to the deadly protocol shots, the vaccine shots in the state of New Jersey, and also while visiting Florida. Gary, thank you for being here today and for your courage and sharing the story publicly. If we can start from the beginning, we'd really love you to tell us a little bit about your brother Tom, if you could.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet with you today. My brother Tom was the middle son of three boys. Tom to my mother and father, Marion and Stanley Seibel. He was born in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, 1960, May 9th. He was the middle brother. He was 5 years older than I was. Always was there for me. Always, my best friend. So he uh, he was a star athlete in high school and college. Always had strong heart, strong stamina. He was a pleasure to be around, a very extroverted person, and contrasted well with my introverted behavior. So he was always lit up the room when he came in the room. He was full of life, which was sad when we started seeing the demise that these shots were taking the life right out of him. So yeah, it was. We grew up in New Jersey. The three of us. We all attended the same high school. We all Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Very proud of our sports teams, and he ended up actually getting a scholarship to wrestle in college. Uh, Very talented artist that you can see in the background there. It's one of his drawings. One of his favorites was his tiger that he made with was a stippling procedure, which pointillism. So artist would know. The Very talented artist. He went to college, wrestled in college his freshman year. I went to the nationals his freshman year. That he came down in his sophomore year. He came down with asthma, and he couldn't wrestle any longer. But pursued. He stayed with his artistic career. Became a graphic illustrator. Uh, his his senior year of college was my freshman year of college. My mother coaxed me into uh, taking pre-engineering up and attending the same college, and that was one of the best decisions I made. To have him, as it is for a freshman in college to go to a new surroundings with no friends, and hell, I knew half the campus when I went there because it was his fourth fifth year of college. So yeah, so it was such an easy transition for me that I excelled in school. Had one of the best social lives of my life, with him around, and he graduated that year, and I moved on the next year, and I ended up getting a college degree from Rutgers University. But always looked up to him for what he accomplished. That's why it takes a sad turn, towards the end. But yeah, we uh, we were. I had moved on. He worked in and around. He always did freelance work throughout his life. I moved around to different jobs. I worked in Texas, Mississippi, uh, and came back to New Jersey when my father was getting older. My brother was a special needs. He did have some chronic asthma, and he also had some bipolar issues. He was on strong meds for that, which uh, which also should have been very closely paid. It should have been paying close attention to what meds he was on when he was taking anything new because of the contraindications. Uh, I myself have a chemical engineering degree. He was a graphic artist. I came home after some time working in the field, 15 to 20 years. That's and cared for my father and my older brother. Um, we were in the process of well, we had just sold the house when we moved down here to South Carolina from New Jersey 4 years, and that was around the timeline of his passing. Uh, so yeah,
Mhm.
it was an honor having him as a brother. It was you know, it was at times it could have been difficult. My mother would fight like cats and dogs constantly, but they were so close that can understand why. But it was always blessed to have a good family and good brothers that were always there for me. So that's why
Wow.
I'm telling my story.
Wow, thank you. We really, really appreciate you taking the courage to tell this story from such a tight knit family that was so close together. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty strong athlete. Coming from that. Now leading into, as we see it, up into the COVID experience, right? And we're still suffering the effects of that, even still today, where we're still dealing with people every day going into the hospital, having strokes, a lot of different things. But can you tell us a little bit about Tom's attitude as you approached when he first heard about COVID? What was going on in your lives at that time point? What were you guys talking about? What was your attitudes about COVID in general?
Well, I'll start with my situation. It just so turned out that uh, the project I was working on, I was actually involved in managing a project of installing a pharmaceutical uh, installation in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And right at the time that the COVID had hit in March of 2020, uh, I was basically my contract was up. It wasn't laid off. I was just my work had ended right at that time. Uh, so I was never confronted or even, before the vaccine came out, I was everybody, we were glued to the television, the news and the scoreboard, that was the thing that got me was, having the scoreboard of cases and deaths on the side, it's like a running ticker. Uh, and it just, nothing seemed right about the whole situation to me. All of a sudden, we have this pandemic and these looming deaths, and my brother was scared. Everybody didn't know what to think at that time, in 2020. They really did a number on us with all their propaganda. I mean, it really turns out the masking and all that distancing and washing your packages and washing your hands for 25 seconds. That's all this stuff was just to push you into fear. And he was fearful. But one thing that triggered my uh, my actually skepticism about the whole situation was when the George Floyd riots, when they broke out. I said, wait a minute here. All right, it's 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 not safe to leave your own home for fear of getting this virus. But all of a sudden, we have thousands of people gathering in the streets, burning buildings down, and it's safe for them. Oh, so I mean, that's the next week. I told my brother, I said, "Look, we're not going to go along. We're going to go on a vacation." We took a trip, and we packed up the car. Wasn't working. I had money saved. I said, we packed up the car and we went to visit some friends of mine in Texas. We drove across the country, and I couldn't believe we're driving across. There's no cars on the road. It's like, and this was in June of 2020. Now,
Wow.
3 months later, uh, you're pulling into a gas station. It's not open, but you could get gas. Gas was cheap. It was under $2 a gallon. I think I spent $200 total driving to Texas and back. Um, it was a pleasure getting to Texas, and you didn't have to wear a mask. You're in a club full of people playing darts. Because that's why I went down there. It was a benefit for an old friend that had cancer that passed. But he said, we're going to drive across the country. We stayed in Tunica, Mississippi at a casino, right? And I'll tell the people at the casino, yeah, I'm social distancing from New Jersey. That's what I told them. So, so,
That was in
so
Texas, was it?
yeah, that was Mississippi, and they laughed at. They loved that one. It was like what? But yeah, we drove across the country and back. No one didn't encounter anybody with sick. Didn't get sick. None of it. In fact, we did it. We did it again in October or November of that year. We went to Oklahoma City, and I went down there for a couple of weeks for a weekend. We did it twice. He did catch pneumonia one time, and what struck me, he went to the emergency room, had pneumonia. They gave him some antibiotics. I asked him, "Did they test you for COVID?" just curious. He said, no, they didn't. They said I didn't have any symptoms. I said, you have shortness of breath. Well, that's a symptom, you know? So that things just didn't seem right the entire year. That's why, I said, I got to get out of the house. The house is not the safest place to be. It's safer to be out amongst the warmth and the sun and the air. Um, those are natural healing for the human body. Those are natural healing mechanisms. So, you know, so yeah, I was trying to. We weren't going along with the fold. So, so to
Mhm.
say. So yeah, we got through that, and then 2021 hit, the late 2020, the election, and then the announcement that we have this magic vaccine that we've just warp speed into the public, and now we have billions and billions of these shots to give out. Suddenly, they had this this antidote, right? And you know, my brother had Medicaid; he was covered. Found out later, no, it wasn't covered. Uh, it was paid by Medicaid. The shot was paid for, and it was listed on his list of charges on his monthly statement. So yeah, he got paid. He had to pay for his own injection through Medicaid. Uh, so yeah, 2021 came April. Yeah, he had the first injection in the beginning of April, and then he had the second injection of the Pfizer 2 weeks later in April. Um, I was at that time. That's when prices shot up for homes in New Jersey, double, like 50% higher. Said, well, I had a tenant in my South Carolina property that had moved out. I said, Tom, I think the time's right. I think the time's right to pick up and sell this house. So I was in the process of going through getting the house out for sale, getting the house empty, getting all the stuff in storage. I couldn't move down to South Carolina. I was so busy. Yeah, he went through with the injections. Come August, he came down with a bout of pneumonia. Uh, I was traveling back and forth. He was making some of the trips with me to South Carolina. He ended up going to the hospital with pneumonia. I think he spent a day or two, not even 2 days, maybe three. Uh, he was admitted to the hospital uh, about the time that myocarditis was a safety signal. It was reported in August, so it wasn't unknown, and it should have been known by the doctors. I would expect the that such a safety signal would be a red flag. So look out for problems with the cardiovascular system. Okay, well, I found out later from his discharge papers from that visit that he had suffered heart failure. These are his documents. These are the documents that they put in his discharge papers. They also they provided him with a blood pressure monitor, which I remember the day he came in home, and I said, well, why are they giving you that? And it didn't explain nothing. He never disclosed what his diagnosis was. They just gave him some, I think, prednisone, some antibiotics, something for his pneumonia, but no further mention of the myocarditis or his heart failure. But nothing was brought up. Didn't have any
That's
follow up. Yeah,
incredible. Incredible. The no mention of the heart failure, such a critical thing. No mention of that.
right. So yeah, he suffered this heart failure. Um, he didn't have a follow up with a cardiologist. He just saw his regular physician, and his as and he also had he had changed doctors. He had somebody, a counselor, a family counselor, per se, because he still had some, he still needed monitoring, because he was manic depressive at times. So they have constant follow up. The psych meds would keep him under control, and he was very well maintained, at that time. But then, um, but nothing further on this heart issue. So I discovered later on, well, we're further down the road. I found out that they administered a booster. I don't know who can approve of a booster after having suffered heart failure. He had the booster in October of 2021, and we sold our house December 2nd, 2021. And I found him. He had passed on New Year's Day, 7 o'clock in the morning of 2022. Um, I first said this is not normal. This is not a natural death. That's what ended up in this death certificate. But I emailed the coroner, and I suggested that I would think it would be a wise decision to do a autopsy, since Tom was taking an experimental drug, the COVID vaccine, and he had just taken the booster. Well, when I called the coroner the following day to follow up with my email, she she said he had the DTaP and he had the flu vaccine in October, and then she left it at that. And I said, well, okay. Well, I found out later on. Yeah, he had those in the beginning of October, but the coroner failed to mention that the booster was also uh, administered 2 weeks after that, in October 15th of 2021. So, first of all, she wasn't. She was lacking of candor, as they put it. Um, she wasn't completely honest with me. Didn't do an autopsy. The toxicology report, of course, they're going to look, make sure there was no nothing involved with of some foreign substance, and they said nothing. But I did find it curious that um, it was a natural causes, but with complications of heart disease and chronic kidney disease, which these weren't ever in his history. He never had any heart disease. He was never diagnosed with kidney or disease. And he also suffered from a pneumonia. So, and I'm finding out now, all three of those are side effects of the COVID vaccine. So, so he suffered three separate side effects potentially from this shot, and no one did a follow up. No one did any due diligence to find out what actually causes death. So that's why I'm telling his story, because yeah, his story needs to be told, because it's among countless thousands of others,
So
thousands of others.
all of a sudden, he just kidney problems just appear right after these shots.
Yeah,
They just suddenly appear, but they didn't do anything about it
but
effectively.
and I didn't even see anything in the coroner's report. I received that a few months back. There's nothing in there to indicate what caused the kidney disease. So, and it is listed of the it's 17 pages, I think. I think there's 1,200 side effects of the COVID vaccine published by Pfizer. Yeah, that's this one here. This document here you're showing is disturbing. Is this was a whistleblower that posted this on Twitter, and this was an internal Bayer document uh, requiring their employees to disclose whether they take any of these drugs that are on this list. And you're seeing common drugs that are over the counter: the Advil, acetaminophen, Tylenol, Sudafed is not over the counter anymore, but Mucinex. There's this entire list. They're claiming you can't take a religious exemption for the vaccine if you take any of these drugs. Well, that's what they're saying, is that they're using aborted fetal cells, either they either utilize it when they produce it, or it's in the product itself. They all utilize aborted fetal cells, and that's what the religious exemption is about. And this is in their own words. Bayer saying we use it, aborted fetal cells in every one of these when we make any one of these drugs. And you can't take a religious exemption if you take any of these. Well, how many people are aware that this list of what, 20, almost 30 drugs uh, require the use of aborted fetal cells? That's human DNA. If I knew this information before my brother took the shots, I would have said, no, Tom, this is not what God would want us to do. He doesn't want us poisoning our body with human DNA.
Mhm.
But let alone any of the other ingredients in these. That alone is horrific. That Christians are being maimed and being they're being forced to not knowing. They're not being forced. They're not unaware of of what it is, the process, what's in the process of making these drugs. They're not they're not providing this information to people, and it needs to be known. That right
Mhm.
there was a shocking of development, because when I first heard religious exemption, why would there be a religious exemption for a shot? And it's like, well, it's
Mhm.
the ingredients. That's what the religious exemption is about, and that is that is a direct violation of our First Amendment rights to practice our religion without uh, without outside influence. I mean, that's you're infringing on our First Amendment rights when you inject any of these into somebody. Uh, and there should be a class action suit against the guy for any of these manufacturers not disclosing that you're using human DNA when you make these. It's like that's number one. One of the highest priorities is get this word out. I try to post this on X. This table direct from Bayer. It was disclosed by a whistleblower, and now these are the kind of things I'm uh, turning up that turn up when you start digging
Mhm.
into this
How
crime.
how did it come about that Tom was looking at the vaccines? Was his employer telling him he had to get this? How did that go? Was he just
So,
considering it? Was he? You want to tell me a little bit about that?
well, he really did. He did. We didn't talk about it much. Realize he was disabled. He was getting money from Medicare, Medicaid. He was getting disability uh, funding every month, and I was handling his finances. I was his trustee. I was his keeper, but I wasn't his healthcare provider. I trusted Medicaid. Um, I left that with Tom, and I also had a friend who was a friend of the family who's a nurse that would help Tom with his if he came home and he needed to do a ventilator, or if he needed to do if he had bandage or something, or he had a broken leg, he had to do something with his leg. She would help. She'd come over and help, and I would leave it. I would trust a close friend uh, to handle his health, and I trusted doctors, but now I don't.
Mhm.
But no, we never really discussed the vaccines. In fact, there was one time when a friend of his mentioned, said, "Hey, Gary, maybe should take the vaccine," and that was after he had taken the first two. And I said, "No, I'm not taking the vaccine. I'll wait. I mean, I'm not. You know, I I don't know why I was spared from that decision, but it was not something that I wanted to pursue. I've never been one. Tom was always one. He would have the flu. He'd come down with occasionally with pneumonia. He'd come down with bronchitis, and he was always, but he never took, the best care when he went outside. But, the less and less, I think, the more, I didn't have to consider it. I left it up to him to make the decision. We didn't talk about it much. I know, and I tried to, push like vitamin C and vitamin D supplements to him to help with his immune system. Uh, but yeah, the more and more I think about, I was spared because I didn't have to fear about. I never had much fear about the flu. Maybe personally, I just
Mhm.
don't get sick very easy. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, he always had a little bit more of compromised immune system. Yeah, and you wonder if it goes back to his childhood of vaccines. I find those, and how back when he was 5 or 6, I'd find his immunization records, and then I'd also see reports, like months or 2 months later of him being outrageous behavior, being unsettled. He was always they call him hyperactive at that time. And I'm wondering, you know, were these has this been going on for longer than we think? Makes you think. But yeah, the bottom line is, as I left the health care up to the healthcare providers, I thought they were the experts and also close family friend. I never persuaded him one way or the other because I didn't know that much about the vaccines at the time. I never liked needles. I never liked vaccines, and it's been decades since I've had an injection, and I'll never, I can't ever see myself getting another injection. That's
Thank
me.
you for that. So, kind of recapping. So, it started in April of 2021 when he got his first dose, and I think it was, you said Pfizer, wasn't it? His
Yes,
first injection, right?
yes,
And
yeah.
where did he get that first injection? Was it like in a doctor's office, or you want to tell where he
No,
got that?
yeah, yeah. They were I used to have in front of me Pfizer dose. I have the lot number ER 8930. April 2nd, 2021, and April 23rd of 2021 was a second dose of Pfizer, and that was at the local Rite Aid. Okay, um,
Wow.
which which uh, which another thing, as an engineer who worked, well, I worked for FDA for over a year. The Just a sterile injectable, and you're injecting it at at a family pharmacy. That's that's not a sterile environment. And then I find out from I read the packaging and I read from Moderna they would ship 5 doses in one vial, and and Pfizer was sending 6 doses in one vial, and they'd have to be pre-mixed. So you're mixing these at a Rite Aid and a non-sterile environment, and you're mixing these, and so so not only did they have a non-sterile environment, now they're doing a process that should have been done at the manufacturer's um, facilities. As an engineer, you don't farm out processes like mixing a final product without having to test rigorously that each lot is that each vial is basically you do an audit so that each vial is you're you're determining that each one's going to be stable and is also going to be consistent. So so many things wrong with the procedures that they followed through, uh, from handling of it, the fact that it was frozen. They had to freeze it to -20 degrees because it's unstable. There's reports, Sasha Latypova put that out there that these injections, right? They have to be thawed out and then used immediately. I was like, well, as a as an investigator, I would say, well, first thing is it's an unstable product. It decomposes. It decomposes at room temperature. That's why it has to be used immediately. Why they can't ship it because it spoils. It's basically decomposing immediate spoils. Um, so you have a product that's spoiling on the counter while it's thawing out, and then you're going to mix it with make 5 doses out of it or 6 doses, which you can't. And their mixing process isn't even a well-defined process. It's invert the caps in a vial 10 times. It's like you could tell that this is just made up. You know, these are not validatable, verifiable processes for mixing. There are exact mixing cycles that you need to do to mix a product efficiently and consistently. So there's so many things wrong that I found just digging into this. That the problem with the decomposition of the material, well, it's not so much the active ingredient is losing its strength. The problem is the active ingredient is changing into something else, just because it's not the active ingredient does not mean it's not reactive. An active ingredient is the ingredient which they want to measure to be ensure that it's providing the mechanism of action that you want. That doesn't mean that the composition materials aren't active also. It just means they're not tracking those. So basically, it's they just let whatever contaminants remain in the vial because that's what they are, contaminants, just not the active ingredient, and they're being injected. So we have aborted fetal cells, not mixed properly, not sterile environment, and now you have also the product itself is contaminated, and they even show. You read the spike vax, like you showed earlier, the spike vax, where they claim that yeah, this is active ingredient, active immunization to prevent coronavirus disease caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome. Well, it doesn't prevent the coronavirus disease. It can't. Because it's injected into your bloodstream, a closed loop system. Your respiratory system is an open loop system. It reacts with the outside environment. They do not cross over. You cannot get immunization from an injection in your circulatory system. So this is an FDA approved spike vax. Um, the first statement is a false statement of false advertising to say it prevents the disease. In fact, they even admit they can't prevent the disease. So this is all garbage. But if you look further into the document on here, it goes into how the handling and the storage of it, and it even says I didn't include that page, but the what it says is if it appears cloudy or discolored, discard it. No, do not administer. That's their resolution. That if it's contaminated, just don't administer it. No, that wasn't FDA practice. That has not been FDA practice for a drug. Uh, the entire time the FDA has been since they were created. You don't just start it. You do is you do a quarantine you check to make sure what the contamination is, because it could be deadly, and then you take the contamination, you send it back to the manufacturer, and they have to investigate and declare whether it is a problem or not. And if it isn't, and if it is a problem, you have to recall the product. Well, uh, don't get me started on the PrEP Act, because the PrEP Act basically it overruled any of those decisions. Any of that FDA guidance has been thrown out. They don't even have to follow good manufacturing procedures. That's the only way they can get away with mixing it at a Rite Aid, is because of the PrEP Act, because it basically allows them to do whatever they want without immunity. It's basically garbage. We are pre FDA, is what
Yeah.
we move back to pre FDA.
Yeah,
We
it's
need.
it's interesting. You mentioned the PrEP Act, and that's one of the biggest hurdles that we face overall with the entire hospital protocols, as well as of course the vaccines as well. Is that you're injured, and then all of a sudden you can't sue for them for lack of informed consent about all the conditions that you're going to now have for the rest of your life, or which include death as well. And you can't hold people accountable and liable for this, right?
Right. They basically, again, I think what a lot of it's misconceived what good manufacturing practices are, good procedures. GMPs are that's actually the basis for your whole product. When you develop your good manufacturing procedures, they lay the foundation for your standard operating procedures, which you write. It's like Betty Crocker. You write down step by step by step what you need to do at each stage of the process to ensure that you have a reliable, consistent, and effective product at the end of the line. This lays the foundation for your entire business, the entire um, drug, whatever you're trying to manufacture. You need to have these GMPs in place. If you just ignore GMPs, then the product is automatically adulterated. They call it. It means it's below quality, because you cannot sufficiently claim that you are making a sound product, because you're not following your own procedures. Basically, that's what they're for. It's so that you write your own procedures and you ensure, so the FDA doesn't have to come in and say, well, you're doing this wrong. No, you write your own procedures. And that's why the GMPs being ignored. Basically, the PrEP Act is really just wrote that right down out. That's why you can mix it at an unsterile environment like a Rite Aid, and why you can mix 5 at a time at a Rite Aid, because I've heard stories from the show I listen to, Stop the Shots. I hear stories about people who worked at distribution centers that, yeah, there was a technician that accidentally they injected somebody with five doses at one time, because it wasn't mixed, and there's just, and I knew that would have to happen, because there's no rules in place. You have not set any rules to ensure that you're going to have a consistent, uh, efficient product across all vials. So yeah, they've done a number,
Oh
with
yeah.
all these legislation that they've passed.
Yeah, it's part of our target, right? Is that we need to get a lot of these things repealed. We need to keep supporting the efforts to, number one, stop the shot, but also stop the machine that's creating, what's happening. So just recapping for your brother's story. So April 2nd, he received his first dose. Then on April 23rd, he received his second dose, and that was in Rite Aid in New Jersey. Then in August, so some months later, he also got he was what happened in August? Can you just walk us through that, if
Yeah.
you will? Yeah.
August was when he had a bout with pneumonia.
Yeah.
He took himself. He took himself to the emergency room. I think at the most 2 days. He spent 2 days there, day and a half, 2 days. I don't even think he was in there long enough that I even visited him at the hospital. I might have visited him one time to bring him some clothes. But I don't even recollect that visit very often, because it was such a short visit. But
Hmm.
when I found later on, I didn't. That's why nothing stood out to me. Just the only thing that stood out to me was he came in with a blood pressure monitor, which he never opened. He never even opened it. So I don't
Hmm.
know what instructions were. But what struck me is later on I found out from that visit he had suffered heart failure, and that's when everything went to. That's when I said, well, come on. suffered Huffer. Then you gave him a booster after that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
So he had he received the shots, and then some months later he received, he develops pneumonia, which is
yep,
strange. Then all of
yep,
a sudden he has kidney failure and heart failure, within a very short time after receiving these shots. That's just, but no mention of it, and no, they didn't say, hey,
no problem.
go do something. No follow up, right, to that.
No, no, and in fact, I've reached out. I sent a letter of requesting his files from St. Luke's. I have to go to their main office in Pennsylvania, Bethlehem, I think. But I sent, and I have not received anything back from them. Just to get his files from St. Luke's, and I can't get that information. So
Wow.
uh, it just seems like I'm hitting a lot of dead ends with his uh, paperwork anyway.
Hmm. So he was then released, from his pneumonia bout in August 28th, and then from what I understand, you guys were taking a trip together down to Florida, right?
Well,
And it was at the tail end of the trip
yeah,
where he was unwell, right? Still, you want to tell us about that,
right.
how that transpired?
Right. Well, in September we actually put the house. We had an open house. We were actually traveled right after his bout. We traveled to South Carolina Labor Day weekend because that's when I was putting the house up, and I didn't want to. They even the realtor said it's better if you're not there. But he said he could handle everything, and then within one day he had a cash offer for the house. So yeah, that was leading up to December when we sold the house. That's why I was able to sell the house in a few months. It was in December of 2021 when we sold the house. We had moved it. We picked everything up. We moved to South Carolina. Uh, Came Christmas time. We had spent Christmas there to my oldest brother Steve lives in Orlando. We would visit every holiday, either most often Christmas, sometimes Thanksgiving, but every year we'd go down there at this time of year. My brother, uh, we went down on a Christmas Eve. We drove down to to Orlando. He was well when we left. He was okay when we left. Fatigue, but he wasn't coming down with any illness. We stopped to eat something in Savannah. I thought we got some Mexican. I thought maybe it was something that it was a little like a little truck stop stand, and I thought maybe I ate the same thing he did, but I thought maybe he had a bad reaction because later in the week he started getting upset. His stomach was upset. Uh, he couldn't keep fluids down. We did go on the Christmas we spent together. We went to see my sister-in-law, her parents. We went to Tampa Hard Rock the day after Christmas. I even have photos from that day. Um, we were at the. He still took part in a couple events in the beginning of the week, but as the week progressed, he was not. He was doing less and less. He was basically sleeping all day, and he was not feeling well. Uh, it came to the weekend. January 1st was the Saturday. We were discussing Friday. Where we're gonna. Normally, we drive back on the first or the second day of January. We drive back to South Carolina, and we were preparing to drive back. And we said, well, it was Friday night. We said, well, if he doesn't improve by the morning, we're gonna go see if we get help. See if he needs help because it didn't seem to be life threatening, but he just wasn't himself for the week. That's when I woke up January 1st. He got up. He got up to get a soda, and I found him on the bathroom floor, deceased. Um, the first indicator, and next day talked to the coroner. That's when the coroner explained he saw the enlarged heart. So first indication was a heart failure. It was a heart attack. So a massive heart attack. Died suddenly, like they say. But yet I followed up with the coroner. Said, well, sent an email out requesting just suggesting that perhaps it'd be a good idea to do an autopsy on my brother since he was taking an experimental drug and he had just taken the booster. Well, I had found out the next day. I called the coroner to follow up to see if she would consider doing the autopsy. She said he didn't have. She said he had he had a flu shot and a flu shot. That's all she said. Well, I found out from his records later that yeah, he had the flu shot in the beginning of October. Yeah, but he also had a DTaP shot in the beginning of October, and he had the booster on October 15th, the Pfizer booster. October 15th, and it's one of those hot locks, I believe. You find it in and How Bad Is My Batch? Lot number FE 3592. I found that in the literature, but yeah, he had that booster, so it had already been decided that we're going to have him cremated before I found that information. So we ended up having a service. I didn't have a funeral because it was still around the time when it was in January. Around the time we were still, they were still pushing the distancing and the lockdown. Not the lockdowns, but the gatherings, the social gatherings. So I said, well, wait till his birthday was in May, and we'll do a service for his birthday in May, and that's why I had him cremated. Thinking about it now, I definitely would have had an autopsy, but
Mhm.
the official cause of death was natural causes with complications from heart disease and chronic kidney disease, which I found out were also side effects of the COVID vaccine. Later
Wow.
on, so he suffered three side effects: um, heart disease, kidney disease, and pneumonia
Mhm.
all from the vaccine. So,
Mhm.
or yeah, all those are considered side effects of the COVID vaccine. So, yeah, he was hit multiple times, and
Mhm.
yeah. So again, it was natural causes, but yeah, it was
I
really
think you,
nothing natural about it.
I think you mentioned in just your write up, along with the injections, you had mentioned that there's a total 23 medications that were administered within just a few months before his death. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just so all of a sudden he develops heart failure, kidney disease, in addition to of course the Pfizer shots, and they can't figure out why he died. Right? It's just natural causes. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is his monthly sheet. This is 1 month of all the indications. Yeah, and I highlighted on the sheet the Pfizer injection, $50, right? Charged to Medicaid. So yeah, people, it's not free. Yeah, it wasn't free. He paid. Yeah, he was. In fact, they're back charging him Medicaid to pay for those. So yeah, you pay for your own death. How's that sound? You
My
know.
gosh. My gosh.
No.
What was the attitude of maybe his environment, maybe family, friends, about after his death? The attitude. What did they communicate, if anything, to you about what they thought happened?
No, not really many. I think a lot of people were at that time were still, the shots were relatively new, within a year. But I did remember at his services in May after I especially when I listened to Dr. David Martin when he breaks down the whole thing with the COVID and the timeline and everything, how it's been prepped for 60 years. That's amazing. And I discovered the website How Bad Is My Batch? That's on with Naomi Wolf put together, that group put together. That is an invaluable resource. I started talking to my cousins, and surprising, what not surprisingly, a number of my cousins said this is the third funeral, the third service I've been to this week, and it was more common than I even thought. Even amongst my family and friends that came to see his service. Yeah, I think people were starting to wake up. They're starting
Mhm.
to see that this is not a one and done. This is not a rare occurrence. This is
Mhm.
happening to many
Mhm.
people.
No, I really, really, yeah, and especially it sounds like your brother was just a really really great guy. You guys had a really close relationship. Can you just thinking about the impact of what has happened since this happened on your life, your family's life, his life? What was the impact that the world has seen since this happened?
Well, yeah, my impact on mine, when I started digging into to all this information, and I start reading about spike backs and reading, I look at his history, medical history. Uh, I've you know I've turned into an activist. I listen to Stop the Shots every night on X Twitter Spaces. Jeremiah Hosea. They have a lot of good information, and then I've joined this Betrayal Project USA. It's an invaluable resource. I've been looking, trying to piece together, how I can, how I actually can file a criminal complaint, and how I can efficiently get this into a court, and get this into discovery, so that just like everybody else is try to get this, try to expose these villains for who they are. Uh,
Mhm.
the But yeah, they said. it's hard. My parents are gone. Now my brother's gone. My oldest brother is in Florida. I have friends. I have a you know, local network of friends and family. Not close by, but they're close enough by. But yeah, the hardest part is being here alone now. And so moving on from that and trying to get this. I still feel like I need to find a resolution to what happened to him. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we can help promote your story, keep pushing it to try to help you get the answers that you deserve. I'm looking at a image right behind you, just in your camera there, about a tiger. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah, that was one of the things he did in college. He and one of the things that helped me, was he was enthusiastic about his artwork. He was really proud of it, and this was one of his proudest accomplishments. Is it's a it's a pointillism, and he took the time. It's from originally from a photograph that he went and he did, and he used points, dots, stippling, and he created this from the image. He created this print, and he ended up putting on shirts and everything else. But it's a such it's such it's such great work that
Wow, it
the
is incredible. It
the, uh,
is incredible.
the amount of detail just from doing one dot at a time. Just imagine how many dots. There's thousands, millions of, you know, to get to create an image from a dot. Quite impressive. Yeah. So
He was very talented in many things, it seems, and as well as your family, you've also had quite a history with your schooling as well, and his schooling. You guys were quite accomplished and continue to be to help the world around you. So, can you think about one particular memory that you'd like to share with everybody about him? Just letting us know, so your favorite memory with him.
hmm, that's a good one. Well, I think of the many trips we were on, especially oh, the one the one time pint. I don't want to sound selfish. One time we were at the casino and it hit the machine for 20,000 quarters. The first time, in Atlantic City, and he'd get excited over, if he got a blackjack, he was the kind of guy, he'd get all excited over a blackjack. And it's like, well, Tom, it's like we made $25. Okay. But the 20,000 quarters, he was sitting there looking and I was down to 13 quarters left, and he's like, well, how much money is that? And it says $5,000, Tom. It's like, holy crap. It was like, wow, you know, so yeah, he was always, we're always happy to see each other succeed. So that was
Wow.
one of the great things about him.
And he's really, really, I would say it's very great. He should be happy to have you, as a brother, because you're so interested to help tell his story and keep promoting it. And I'd like to open this up to you just to add any final words to anybody watching this, anything you'd like the world to know about what happened and maybe about the topic.
Just learn more. Turn off the mainstream TV. Uh, Start looking up. I learned so much now when I start looking at package inserts to see what my natural affinity to learn chemistry, and then I start reading these ingredients, and then you see aluminum is in your food, and just learn what's in these items that are going in your body because they're not being honest. The the fact that recombinant DNA, that's just disgusting. Is that they're taking and when they went back and they unpacked the human genome, I knew that was a problem. And back in the 90s, like late 90s, I said, this is not going to be good for humanity. And then I think that's my instinct was right. But that you're using aborted fetal cells, like and that's not healthcare, okay? And that's not medicine, and it's not good for anyone. So the biggest thing to take away from it is don't inject these poisons because none of them are any good. They've, I don't trust any of the work they've done. It's all smoke and mirrors, and really, I have turned over plenty of evidence to show that it's all fraud. It's all, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I try to keep my mind open. It gets to be overwhelming at times. Honestly, I have to turn it off and I'll take a walk on the beach for an hour. Just turn off everything in the world because it's overwhelming at times. To think of what's going on.
Mhm.
And then one quick story. There was also a young lady I know that from Atlantic City, and she just lost her 2-year-old son, and I found out that she believes that the vaccines caused, and I'm reading more and more about sudden infant death syndrome, and sudden infant death syndrome as a cause of death for infants is just this cover up is so immense. You know it's not a vaccine death because they removed it in 1979 from the official uh, cause of death. It's not listed as one of the 130, so you'll never get a, a infant death from a vaccination because they can't
They
record it
can't,
as
they can't
such.
label it. They can't label it as
Yeah,
it because they removed it as a
yeah.
possibility to be
So
labeled.
it just shows how vast the fraud is. You know, years and decades in the making. So that's the biggest thing. Just careful what you do. You know.
Mhm. I'm so thankful that you had the courage to tell your story and continue to do that. Here at Betrayal Project USA, we ask anybody if you've heard of anyone or if you have a family member who suffered something similar to Gary, like his brother Tom went through, please contact us. Let us know. Someone, a volunteer like myself, will be reaching out to you to schedule an interview like this one. Please share these stories far and wide if you can on social media to raise awareness, everyone you can, to make sure that everybody knows this information. There shouldn't be a reason now that we can't get this to everyone of what's happening with our vaccines and also in the hospitals and also just in the medical industry in general with the pharmaceuticals. So please contact us so that we can get to hold people accountable for these terrible crimes against humanity. So again, Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. We hope to see you. We have many support groups throughout the week to assist those who either suffered hospital protocol deaths or vaccine injuries. Please come join us or just say hello. If you'd like to know more, please contact us and we will get you the information. So thank you so much, Gary. And I hope that you have a great weekend and a happy Christmas upcoming. Okay.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you so
It's
much.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great week.